You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You only get to choose which price you pay.
Success is the metric, passion is the energy, purpose is the posture.
If your role changes, your purpose and identity shouldn't collapse. Welcome to another episode of Price of Purpose. I'm Jeremy and this is Q, and each week we discuss what it looks like to pay the price of pursuing purpose through your faith, family, and entrepreneurship. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You only get to choose which price you pay. Join us in our passion of finding ways we can be more intentional by paying the price of purpose. Jesus, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the chance to grow with you, be challenged by you, pushed out of our comfort zones by you. I pray that our helmets, breastplate, belt, shoes would be fitted securely, that our shields would be strong, and that our swords would be sharp and true. Thank you for today, and thank you for loving us. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so segment 1, today we're going to be going over the myths that we've been sold over what purpose truly is.
What were some misconceptions about purpose that you had?
One of the biggest misconceptions that I've struggled with about purpose in my life and truly trying to feel that the peace and the joy, especially with what the Bible talks about, the peace that transcends all understanding, is tying success to who I am as a person, like what makes up my purpose and my identity.
Something that you can measure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has been a struggle because we talk about on here how the opportunity to fail and face adversity helps us grow. And in the past, not seeing that as an opportunity, but seeing that adversity and that failure as a lack of purpose, because you're seeing a lack of success, has been really hard to handle over the years for sure.
Well, I think one of the things that makes it more difficult is how vague purpose is. Because whenever you're working, for me at least, whenever I was working a job as a manager, it was like that was my purpose, was to make sure I ran good shifts, solid shifts. But what happened on the days I didn't run a good shift?
Yeah.
That means I was like walking out of purpose? Did that mean I was walking the wrong purpose? You know, like
right.
So for me, at least, that's when I confused purpose with position. Definitely, that was a big one. That's
hard not to, because especially in the culture we have, the American dream, and how driven we can be to be successful and have things that tangibly with our eyes, maybe even touch, smell, see, all of those things, we're trying to produce the evidence to show our purpose. And that's one of the biggest myths that I also struggled with over the years, was looking for my purpose in things, maybe even only things that I could see, touch, feel, hear, all of those things. Mm-hmm. The trick with that is there's a lot of interpretations of purpose out there, and I was looking for individuals and people and groups of people to give me my definition of purpose back. And the whole idea of being able to set our eyes on something higher, that's the bar of purpose for everyone, takes a lot of pressure off of saying, no matter the dips and the valleys of life, no matter the peaks, my bar of purpose is so high, none of those measure it, none of those define it. And that's where the kingdom mindset really comes in for me in my life, of saying, no matter what I do, no matter how good I am at it compared to somebody else, as long as I'm doing my best to honor the Lord in what I'm doing and find out who He's created me to be, on those bad days I can say, you know what, man, today was kind of bumpy. It was a struggle. But I'm so thankful what the Lord has given me and who He's made me to be.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I've been able to find that peace, even in the days where it's like nobody thinks maybe on the outside that I'm being successful, but my purpose is being fulfilled and I have peace even when the storm is raging around me.
So you're making sacrifices for your future.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that keeps people from even understanding what their purpose is because they're not making sacrifices? They're just giving into like the comforts and the security of...
Man, that's good. 100%. You got to think the short term, and we are wired as humans, and even in our brains, all the way down to our subconscious, to survive and be protected. Mm-hmm. But in that comfort, in that box we're putting ourselves in, we are missing the opportunity to see other avenues, other pathways to places that God might be calling us to. That's like, man, I see that. That's cool and exciting, but imagine a sheer rock face, and it's like, the opportunity for me to be up there is exciting, but the terror of having to climb that rock face to get there is overwhelming.
Right.
And we do miss so many opportunities. It's not that that's meant to deter you and say, oh, don't do that because that's dangerous and scary and risky. It is dangerous, scary, and risky. The only thing you need to do and check with the Lord is like, hey, is that an option for me? Like, can I go up there?
Right.
And if it's in line with who He's created you to be, and it feeds off those passions and the gifts He's given you, and He says like, yeah, you can go check that out.
And the cool thing about that too is even though climbing that mountain may not necessarily be aligned with your purpose, it'll at least, God will still use that
100%
later on in the future.
But if you're not willing to even take that risk,
right,
the times you are needing to go somewhere,
right,
to find your purpose and walk in and fulfill it, you're not practicing those skills needed, the discipline needed to face those risks necessary to go where you need to go, for sure.
There's so many times, man, like I could look back at my time, I'll just stick on the manager, but so it was a virtue of mine to never ask somebody to do something I wasn't willing to do myself. Mm-hmm. So if it was like the first time something happened, so like even something gross, like somebody throwing up in the restaurant. When I first started, I cleaned it the first time. I didn't ask anybody. I did it myself. Just to set that example, that I'm not going to ask you to do something. But just because I was doing things similar to that, or I was showing up on my off time, even though I wasn't feeling fulfilled on that moment, now I can look back on those moments whenever I have really busy seasons or really stressful moments. I can look back on those moments and say, oh, I climbed that stuff. This is nothing. You know what I mean?
100%.
Just because that thing didn't align with it, it wasn't wasted.
Yeah. You built your tolerance up. Just so we have tolerance for everything. You built your tolerance up to facing uncomfortable situations so that in the future, and that day by day, the smaller things that can still even overwhelm other people, and maybe that have even overwhelmed us at times. There's stuff I'm tolerant to now that, like you said, it seems like no big deal, but at one point it was something that maybe deterred me from engaging in something that I either needed to accomplish, maybe a new adventure, whatever it may be. But tolerance is a muscle we have to work out.
That's what it comes down to, is what can you tolerate?
Yeah. And there's a quote that talks about that. You don't get in life what you work for, what you hope for, what you want. You get what you tolerate.
Yep.
If your tolerance level is down here, everything you're trying to go for up here, you won't get there, because you'll meet this level and you say, you know what, that's too much. But I did try, I went out and explored a little, and I'm okay accepting this.
What if you are okay with accepting that, though?
If you are okay being here, you need to now ask, is it out of being content and thankful and grateful that you were able to make it here, or are you becoming complacent? And that's the challenge we all face, is once we get here and we build a tolerance and we build a situation where we are efficient and equipped to consistently stay there, I believe God is always pulling us to say, hey, now look up again and see the new opportunity of where I'm taking you to once again equip you, grow you, strengthen you, to be sanctified through this process of life. to look more like me and less like the version of yourself that felt insecure, felt inferior, felt like you had to prove yourself.
Right.
Felt like you had to be given accolades from people to matter.
Right.
We're slowly moving away from that to saying, hey, I'm loved at every level. I'm loved at every point of the journey. It's not even about levels, but every point of the journey. As I'm climbing the rock face, I'm loved. As I get to the top, I'm loved. If I fall down, God's there picking me up. I'm loved. And making that journey is huge, because then everything's based on the true definition of who you are instead of getting feedback. I mean, how many crazy ideas are out there in the world?
I contribute probably a lot of those.
Right, and I have a lot of my own crazy ideas. But that's where the accountability comes in to say, hey, I can't just listen to everybody around me. I can take feedback. I can take being challenged by ideas of others, but I ultimately have to hold them accountable to the Word of God. And this is our belief. And we may not share that with everybody out there, but I believe that that's the ultimate standard of truth and direction. He's the author of the entire universe, that if we hold ourselves to collecting all of those views, all of those ideas, but making sure they match the ultimate definition and standard of what's true in our lives, that's where we can then operate in a consistent place of knowing who we are.
One of the biggest misconceptions I had about purpose that was really detrimental at the time was feeling like walking in my purpose was like walking on a tightrope. Like I had no room for error.
Yeah.
I had to walk the straight and narrow. I had to I had to check my thoughts constantly. I had to, if I made a mistake, it was just the collapse of everything.
Right.
But really, in hindsight, looking at all that, what that really was that I was putting my purpose in things that were so fragile. That's why it felt like walking a tightrope.
That's good.
Because I was basing it off of, my purpose is videography. Brief story. The reason I latched on to videography, I was working for the church. We were videoing the summer camps. They would video the summer camps throughout the day, edit them at night, show them at worship the next morning. So you're busting out 4 videos a week. You know what I mean? Like real quick turnarounds. That was my first, aside from school, because I did take a class in high school, but that was my first video I ever produced outside of a school setting. And that first video I did got me an office job working for now one of the biggest, they made the Forbes 500 list for franchises. Like I got an office job working for that company based off my first video. So it was like, okay, there's favor.
It's awesome.
There's success, you know? So that's when I latched onto it, and that's when I really felt like I had a purpose in it. But it wasn't until I got to where I'm at now, where I'm now between all the businesses I run social media for, I'm putting out about 100 videos a month. So it wasn't until I was putting out 100 videos a month and realizing how unfulfilled I was for me to realize my purpose was so much deeper than just videography. Videography, social media management were tools in my belt. They're assets.
Yeah.
To contribute to the purpose, but they're not my purpose. Like, let's just say like the internet runs out one day. If I had put all my purpose in, if I had completely put my purpose in my work is on the internet. So like if the internet goes out one day,
right,
suddenly I'm lost,
right.
You know?
Yeah. So would you say that those things are more of your passions that fuel into your purpose?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Like you explained them as tools, assets.
I had to adjust my why and go back to the original idea of everything was I wanted to make videos for other people. But I had stopped on just making videos.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I got to the to where I was pushing out 100 videos a month.
Yeah.
Between all the social media accounts. But I forgot the why. And the why was for the benefit of other people, to capture a moment in a wedding, to to support a growing business or to capture an event. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of other things that I just forgot about in that because I was so consumed with just making videos. But
Yeah.
again, I did need that just to get to the quality I have now and the understanding I have now of how social media works, how to shoot social media content. So God didn't waste it. It was all used. But that fine tuning of purpose is what we're getting down to. And it really depends on what your why is.
Yeah. Yeah, you were gaining that knowledge through experience that helped you be even better at serving others. So Jay Shetty talks about it. That's his name, right?
Yes.
He talks about how that using your passions to fuel your purpose. Am I saying that right? Can you share that better?
It's using your passions. Purpose is using your passions in the service of others.
Great. And that's what you challenging your why was finding out, okay, I want to use these passions, these tools, these assets that I have to serve other people. And when you remembered that in service of those others, you found your purpose through that.
Right.
Because you could then use that same work ethic, creativity, even if the internet disappeared, to use whatever form of advertising or capturing special moments or bringing people together to share a special moment. You could still use those gifts to serve other people and keep fulfilling your purpose.
It's the same feeling that like chefs talk about whenever they say like there's no greater feeling than watching people eat the food you just made them.
Yeah.
Because that like it is cool. You put in all this effort for something and then you're sitting at the dinner table and you're watching all these people. Nobody's talking because they're just eating because it's good, hopefully, you know. But knowing that you did something that everybody's enjoying, like that's purpose right there too.
Yeah.
Like you're using your talents and your gifts and your passions to serve other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the core ideas we have here is that culture often defines purpose as something flashy, career-based, or impressive. And we're talking about things that challenge that narrative and expose the pressure it creates. So like you're talking about, even if you put a smile on one person, like if a chef served one person over for food, it fills that purpose.
Yes.
But in the things that we watch through the news and social media and on the internet and even in our own little world in person, I've felt this, and I feel like it's a common thing, that if not many people are noticing, then it's not valid.
Yes, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like you take minor league baseball as opposed to major league. You know, the crowd's not as big, it's not as big a level, so it doesn't matter as much.
Right.
It just gives off that vibe.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And once again, if we set that bar, that regardless of who is watching, who isn't watching, and the creator is, and we're getting that peace and fulfillment out of it, that totally changes the game.
Right. I mean, that's what separated Kobe, you know, that was his big thing was, I will always train harder than you. And it was out of competitiveness, but it was out of his drive to be the best.
Yeah. But do you think he would have trained that hard even if he wasn't talked about as much as he was?
I think it helped, but I would like to believe that he had that.
I do too.
You know, I think he had that on his own. But
I think if he'd have been an off the bench player, I think that was just in him.
Yes.
But I think his goal was to say, at the end of the day, whether I'm Kobe Bryant, considered one of the greatest, or I'm coming off the bench to support my team, when I lay my head down at night, I'm going to say I did what was required and some.
Yeah.
Because I want to know I gave every ounce of effort I could chasing my purpose. So he was content. I believe he would have been content either way, saying, man, because of my work ethic, that brings the contentment.
Right.
But he wasn't going to let himself be complacent and just staying and showing up for scheduled practice.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the difference, saying, hey, I'm content after I put in everything I can and everything I have. It's literally all I can do is my best. I'm going to be content with what I get back and thankful for that. If we can really shift our perspective on that, it gives us the opportunity to celebrate.
And that mindset that he had is the reason we're talking about him right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Because that's why we're not talking about anybody else, because he had that mindset in him. Because I could see that too, man. Like, even outside of the NBA, but we'll just stick with the NBA for this example. But like, you go through middle school, high school, playing basketball, college, you make it to the pros, you made it.
Mm-hmm.
You made it. You're with the best coaches, you're with the best trainers, you're good, you know? That wasn't enough for Kobe, you know? So like Kobe still had that drive that he had when he was in middle school of being the best player.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, I think that just clarifies like why we're talking about him, because his purpose was bigger than just being in the NBA. Yeah,
it transcended basketball. It wasn't just about the accolade, and that's what's cool about him. And I don't know if he even realized that, but it's about his own accountability to himself.
Right.
Like, he did not measure his value off the accolades he was receiving from others, which was cool.
I would like to look at that situation and say that there's two different kinds of pressure. There's the one that keeps you up, that keeps you training, that keeps you up at nights, problem solving. We work for ourselves, so we have those nights where we'll wake up. For me, at least, like, I'll wake up and roll over, type some notes out that just pop into my brain. I know I can't go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I also think there's pressure in feeling like a disappointment, feeling shameful.
100%. There's pressure that's fear-based, and there's pressure that's identity-based.
Yes. So the pressure that's fear-based, that feels like disappointment, feels like shame. If you're feeling that way, if you're doing something and you feel like it's your purpose and it's causing you to feel that way, I would challenge you that that's not your purpose.
Yeah, I agree.
If your purpose is causing you suffering, unjust suffering, I don't think that's your purpose.
Especially inner turmoil. If you're having to run from something instead of to something,
yes,
that's a totally different thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Good pressure pushes you into things that are growing you into security and identity, true identity. Fear-based is like, I'm trying to get away from this pressure to then be safe.
Yeah. Why are you running?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's big. So that was part 1 of 3. We're releasing part 2 on Wednesday, part 3 on Friday. Or you can wait till the full episode to come out on Saturday, as we dive deeper into what is purpose.